President Joe Biden casting his ballot for the 2024 presidential election there just moments ago. Afterwards, a reporter asked him if he was seeing the moment as bittersweet. To that, the president responded, just sweet. But both campaigns now in full swing as candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump make their final arguments to voters. They know this, and so do we. They have 8 days to make their closing arguments to try to capture those crucial undecided voters. So to do that, Harris is wheels up to the state of Michigan. Trump is going down to Georgia. He's dealing with a lot of things today, not the least of which the fallout of his rally in New York over the weekend. What happened? Well, if you didn't hear it yet, here it is. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe said this about Puerto Rico.
There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there.
So the Latino vote, crucial for any campaign wanting to win the White House. Kamala Harris addressed those comments while departing from Michigan. Here's what we caught her saying.
I think last night Donald Trump's event in Madison Square Garden really highlighted a point that I've been making throughout this campaign. He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country. And it is not in any way something that will strengthen the American family, the American worker. It is nothing about what he is saying that is actually going to support the aspirations, the dreams, and the ambitions of the American people. It is absolutely something that is intended to and is fanning the fuel of trying to divide our country.
So you see them here, our campaign reporters following these campaigns right to the end. Aaron Navarro is with Team Harris. But first, CBS News' Jared Eggleston is at Atlanta with the Trump campaign. Jared, what's the damage there on the ground of the Trump campaign as they react to this today?
Reed, good afternoon to you. You know, the Trump campaign advisor told CBS News that they are frustrated at those comments that were made prior to the former president taking stage in Madison Square Garden last night. Now, this rally, as you saw there, was a big one. It was intended for it to be the closing remarks of the former president's campaign. As you said in that intro there, Reed, we just have about 8 days left until Election Day. And right now, these campaigns know that those undecided voters are so crucial, and so they were hoping that, you know, the focus would be on things like the economy, immigration, areas where Trump feels most comfortable. But instead today we're talking about these comments that were made prior to the former president going on stage. And we should point out, Reed, that the campaign is distancing themselves from it, telling CBS News that they did not know that comedian was going to say those last night as well.
Right, distancing themselves, but that Latino vote is so crucial for anybody who wants to win the White House. And yet Donald Trump doubling down on talking about mass deportations, also talking about tariffs. What can you tell us about that?
So last night, Reed, we heard the former president talk about things that are key to his campaign. You said those tariffs, those mass deportations. He also announced a new policy last night saying that he would give a tax credit for Americans, for families that are caring for a loved one. So it's very clear in these last days of the campaign, like you said, Reed, that Latino vote is so popular. These campaigns are trying to reach for just any of these undecided voters that are still out there, which we know from polling that it is very small at this point.
Yeah, let's talk about those very thin margins. He's set to give remarks today later in Atlanta. The former president lost that state back in 2020. Coming off that controversial event over the weekend, can we expect anything different, any change from Donald Trump?
I think today we would expect Donald Trump to be really focusing on those issues that I mentioned, the economy, immigration. Those are issues that we found matter most to Georgians, or to voters here in Georgia, but not only here in Georgia, but across battleground states. So expect the former president to lean into issues like that. We are outside of where that rally will be taking place later on tonight. Right now, we are in Midtown Atlanta, an area here in Georgia that really is a stronghold for the Vice President Kamala Harris. But the former president making several trips, and the campaign itself making several trips here to Georgia over the last few days and even weeks, showing that they understand just how crucial it is to win that vote here. Because, Reed, as you pointed out, the former president only lost the state of Georgia by some 11,000 votes last year. So it is going to be incredibly tight on election night.
Jared, thank you so much for that report. So CBS News campaign reporter Aaron Navarro, as promised, brings us the Harris campaign. Aaron, just moments ago, the vice president talked to reporters right there before getting on a plane. Her comments about what President Donald Trump's comedian had to say at that New York rally. She's now moving on to talk to voters in Michigan. What do we expect her to have to say to voters there?
Well, Reed, good to be with you. We expect Harris to focus on union voters and manufacturing in Michigan. She's going to be visiting a facility for semiconductors in Saginaw that benefited from federal funding from the CHIPS Act. All of this happening as she's making her closing message speech in the next 8 days on the economy, trying to cut into the lead that Trump has in polling. And our latest CBS News polling shows that Trump has maintained his edge on the economy. Part of Harris's visit to Michigan today is to try and cut into that.
So Harris hitting 6 states this week as part of her closing arguments to voters. It's a hefty schedule. So where does the campaign trail lead next?
Michigan today, ending with a rally with her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, one of their first events in a while that they're doing together. Singer Maggie Rogers will also be there. Tomorrow in D.C., she's set to give a speech on the ellipse in front of the White House, really leaning into that contrast on democracy in January 6th, but also putting a blunt question to voters. Who do you want to see in that White House behind me, who's focused on you, or Trump, who Harris says is focused on his grievances? And then she will be hitting 3 states on Wednesday: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, with another big GOTV rally and concert there in that big Democratic bastion of votes in Madison, Wisconsin. And then Nevada and Arizona with other concerts going on accompanying her events on Thursday. And that's all we have for the next 4 days.
All right, well, that's a whole bunch right there on the menu. Another Obama set to campaign for Kamala Harris. Barack Obama hits the stage in Philadelphia alongside Bruce Springsteen, John Legend. What are you watching there?
I'm watching to see how much Barack Obama talks about Harris's policies. In a lot of his speeches, the message he leans on is the contrast between her and Trump when it comes to character. He brings up how Trump handled the COVID-19 pandemic, saying that Trump did not use the playbook that Obama left during his administration for pandemic situations. Will he talk about Harris's economic plan? Will he try and make the case for her going forward, rather than reminding voters of the dangers of former President Trump? It's something that animates the base, but I'm curious to see in these closing days if Obama, a big, prolific Democrat, will lean into Harris's policies.
Aaron Navarro, CBS News campaign reporter, thank you so much for that report from Washington. Always great to talk to you.